Welcome at the second knowledge clip about searching literature, about in- and exclusion criteria. These were the steps that we presented before that we need to take to go from a proper research question to an answer to this research question when we perform a literature study. So we covered formulating the research question, we covered searching the literature through entering search terms into PubMed, and now we'll go to the step that we describe how to use criteria to define the articles that you want to use for your study. Another example of results in PubMed. Here you see another combination of search terms, and you see that the results that are presented are many. It's more than 16,000 results. Of course, that's too many to go through. So these search terms were perhaps not specific enough. But you'll always get too many results to all read. So we need a way to systematically define which article we're going to use in our research study and which articles we're going to exclude. So how do we formulate such criteria, these inclusion or exclusion criteria, and what are they? So these are criteria that you use to include or exclude the articles that you found from your search terms in PubMed in order to formulate an answer to your research question. These criteria are one-to-one related to the elements of your research question. So why do we need these inclusion and exclusion criteria? To reduce the number of articles found, such a way that you can bring focus into your research and into your results. Keep in mind, these criteria are not entered into PubMed. It's something you do manually after putting your search terms into PubMed. So how do we get from our search terms to these inclusion and exclusion criteria? First, let's look at the search terms again and the implicit criteria that are associated with this. So these were the search terms that we looked at before. Morbid obesity and weight or BMI, and diet and adolescence. So the implicit criteria that are in here are that we are looking for articles dealing with adolescents with morbid obesity. These articles should be about the outcome measure, weight or BMI, or formulated in such a way that we say we need to include articles in which the outcome measure is weight or BMI. And we are including articles in which the effect of a diet is described. So your search terms already provide a way to formulate implicit criteria. But then we want to add to that information because we already put that in our search terms. So you can expect that most of your results will be about these items. So what are now then the explicit criteria that we formulate? We can divide that in three different parts. So often we look at criteria first related to the patient group or your population. For example, you specify it to be of a particular gender or of a specific age range or having a particular pathology. So in this case, you say that you are looking for humans, well, adolescents, but that's a specific age range. Then we can also define criteria that are related to the treatment, if applicable. So in this case, our intervention or our treatment is the diet. But we could also be interested in a specific type of diet. So then we define an inclusion criteria where we specify this specific type of diet. And then next, we also want to define criteria that are related to the outcome measure. So in this case, we already specified weight or BMI. But perhaps we want to specify that it's measured in terms of kilograms or that it is a specific way the BMI is calculated. When you formulate your inclusion and exclusion criteria, you need to provide arguments for your criteria. Why is this an important criterion? So let's look at three examples of inclusion and exclusion criteria. First, an example about the patient group. We're looking at depression. That was part of our research question and was formulated in our search terms. But how do we know for sure that a patient is actually depressed? We could demand that we only want to include articles in which depression was diagnosed by a general practitioner or specialist. So then we formulate this inclusion criterion in such that we say articles in which depression was diagnosed by a general practitioner or specialist are included. This is an example of an exclusion criterion about the participants. We're looking at a study about elderly, and we only want to look at elderly who live in a nursing home. So we could formulate this as an exclusion criterion where we say articles in which the participants are elderly who are living at home are excluded. And then the last example about the outcome measure. For example, we could state that the outcome measure should be bite force, or in another type of study, walking distance. So then we say articles in which the outcome measure is bite force are included. So what should you remember from this knowledge clip? First of all, you include articles, not participants. After all, we were performing a literature study, so we were searching for literature, and we're not including participants in our study. These criteria are aimed at providing focus in the literature found, because you get many results after entering your search terms into PubMed, and you want to run them through and define whether you want to include or exclude this specific article in your study based on these criteria. Also remember that one criterion should be formulated as either an inclusion or an exclusion criterion, not as both. So when you're looking at gender and you specifically want articles about female participants, you should not formulate an inclusion criterion about females and then say in an exclusion criterion that all articles about male are excluded. So one inclusion or exclusion criterion. Thank you for listening.